Hi guys. So I'm going to help you a little bit with graphing systems of inequalities now to find where they might share a solution. So you have experience graphing lines to find out if they have a solution, if there's a point that both lines share. You also, from before Christmas, you have experience graphing inequalities. That's when you have to decide if the line is dotted or solid and then shade above or below that line, depending on what kind of inequality you have. So a lot of the basics you already know, and I'm going to walk you through what you have to do to be able to do two at a time. So the first thing to remember is when you're working with inequalities at all, and you have to solve for y before you can graph it, just like an equation. Make sure you don't forget that you have to flip the symbol. Less than will turn to greater, greater will turn to less if you divide both sides by a negative number. And we'll see some of those in my examples. Then there's only three things you have to be aware of. This one, then whether the line is solid or dotted. If it has an equal sign like equations, they're solid. If it doesn't, and it's only an inequality, then they're dotted. And then for shading, if the symbol is greater than, you're going to shade above the line. If it's less than, like an L for less, then you're going to shade below the line. So here's the first example. Both of these inequalities are already solved for y, so I'm ready to go. I'll color code them here just to make it simpler. This will be the green one. I'll do him first. Put my first dot on the y-intercept of 1. My slope says to go up 1 over 2, so I'll do that. Extend it this direction. Now here's where it's different. Instead of just drawing the line, I have to first look and decide, is this line going to be dotted or solid? Since it has an equal sign, that is going to be a solid line, so it will look like this. Now one of the tricks is make sure you shade this first line before you try to draw the other one, or you'll get real confused. So this symbol said greater than, so I'm going to shade above my line, so that would be up here. So once I know where that is, I'm going to shade the entire graph on that side of the line. So get that shaded first. Once you have the entire graph shaded on that side, then you can start thinking about your second line. So if I make the other one the pink line, then my first dot will go on the y-intercept of -2. The slope says go up 2 over 1. So I'll go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. That would have been the solution if these were equations, but that's not how these work. There's more than that to the solution. So this one says greater than. There's no equal to. So this one's going to be a dotted line since it's not equal to, just greater. So we'll do a dotted line for that one. Now the hardest part is this very last step. When I go to shade the last line, I have to focus just on the line I just drew. I have to tune out this other line, the y-axis, the x-axis, and just focus on this line. So this says greater than, so I'm going to go above that line. So that means right here, like this, above, above. So when I shade above that line, I'm going to shade the entire graph on that side. Oops, I messed up a little bit there. On that side of the line, stay on that side of the line. And shade the entire graph on that side. So the solution to this system is easy to see. It's the part of the graph where the two shadings overlap. So on this particular problem, the solution would be this area right here. Now when you're checking work on an answer key, or if you're doing multiple choice, the answers will look just like the shaded area. They won't have the other stuff. So they'll look just more like this. They'll have just the answer and not the other shading, but your work should show all of the shading with the overlapping part just darkened up a little bit. So this is what the answer key might look like. This, but your work would look like that. All right, so let's try another one. Here's an example where we'll make this one the orange one. So the first dot goes on -2. This says -1/3, so I'm going to be sure I go down 1 over 3. making sure my line goes down. So up 1, 1, 2, 3. If I reverse it, so that line's going down. This says less than. There's no equal to, so that's going to be a dotted line. I'm going to make sure I go all the way across the graph. That makes it easier. And I'm going to do my shading less than, so that would be below, before I even think about doing the other line. So I'm going to shade everything on this side of the line. And then I'll do my other one. Now this is a special line. If there's only one letter in it, it means it's either vertical or horizontal. Do you remember which one this is? The letter, the variable that's there, tells you which axis to cross. So I'm supposed to cross the x-axis. So I'll have to go like this, cross it. So I guess it must be vertical. I'll put my dot on -3 on x, since that's the only letter. And then I'm going to cross that axis. So when I cross, I have to decide, is that line solid or dotted? Since it has equals in it, also equal to, that's going to be a solid line. I missed it a tiny bit there. So when I go to shade, now this one, there's not really above and below when you're looking at vertical. So you have to think. If this green one says less than, and I'm looking at a vertical line, do numbers get less to the right or to the left? And the answer to that is to the left. Less than would be to the left if it's vertical, or below otherwise. So the solution, this part got out of control right there. The solution to this system would be this area right here, just this little wedge right here. All right, maybe one more. So here's an example when you have to solve for y. If y isn't by itself, we can't graph it yet. So we're going to get y by itself, just like you always have, just like when you are working with equations. Be careful with your signs. Y is negative. Bring down your symbol, -x plus 3. Now this one's not done yet. Since we have negative y, I have to divide, that's a -1y. So I have to divide by -1. Here's that thing you have to watch out for. If you divide by a negative number, you need to flip that symbol. So now I have a greater than. So then I would have +x and -3. So when I go to graph this one, first dot on -3, +x, which means 1x over 1. So up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. And that line doesn't have an equals, so that's going to be a dotted line. And then, longer there. And then for shading, that says greater than, so I'm going to go up from that line, and we'll be looking like that. So you have to be careful when you solve for y. As you can see, that inequality originally said less than, but when I solved it for y, it came out being greater than, because I had to flip the symbol because I had a negative coefficient of y to divide by. So for the second equation, or inequality, I should say, I also have to solve it for y. So I'll bring it over here. 2x plus y is less than 3. I'll have to minus 2x from both sides. Then I guess I'm done. Y is less than -2x plus 3. First dot on 3, down 2 over 1 because it was a negative. Continue that pattern. And then decide if this one is going to be dotted or solid. No equal to, so I guess that's another dotted line. And this time it says less than, so I'm going to shade below that line, below, below, below. So that'll be down here. So it'll be everything on this side of the line. Remember, you have to do the whole graph on that side of the line, so you've got to ignore all the other lines. Don't stop anywhere. And so the overlapping part would be this area here. All of this would be the solution. So that's about it. You just have to be real careful when you solve for y. Flip that symbol if you divide by negative. And then here's sort of an order of steps. You put your first dot on the y-axis, then you do your rise over run, Then decide if the line is solid or dotted based on that symbol, and then decide if you're going to shade above or below based on that symbol. Make sure you shade the first line before you do the second line, and then this very last shading, tune out everything except the line you just drew. I know you can do it. Good luck.